Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem, and here is the news. For 494 days, Ukraine defends itself against the forces of the Russian invasion. Yesterday, President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the Odessa region on Ukraine's Black Sea coast to mark Ukraine's Navy Day. In his address from Odessa, the president thanked warriors of the Ukrainian Navy. All sailors, all marines, all commanders, artillery, naval aviators, drone operators, as well as warriors of the river flotilla, river divisions. Zelensky stressed that the enemy will definitely not dictate the conditions in the Black Sea, and the occupiers will have to be as afraid of approaching the Ukrainian Crimea and Ukraine's Azov Sea coast as Russian ships were already afraid of approaching the Black Sea coast. Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said that Ukrainian units are gradually advancing on the Berdyansk and Melitopol fronts in southern Ukraine, reports Ukrainska Pravda. According to her, Ukrainian troops face intense enemy resistance, remote mining, transfer of reserves, but persistently and tirelessly create conditions for the speedy movement forward. At the same time, in the east, on Avdiivka, Mariinka, Liman fronts, the Russians are on the offensive. There are fierce battles, the enemy attacks Bilohorivka, Serebryanka. The situation is quite complicated, said Maliar. On the southern flank of the Bakhmut front, the Ukrainian forces are moving forward with partial success, and on the north, the battles continue. The Russians transferred 2 air assault regiments there. Spokesperson for the East grouping Sergei Cherevati earlier said that Ukrainian forces were advancing on the southern and northern flanks around Bakhmut, and Ukrainian snipers and some other units were operating in the city itself. Spokesperson for the southern grouping Natalia Gumenyuk said that heavy fighting is going on in the area of Antonivka Bridge in Kherson Oblast. She said it was primarily counter-battery activity but did not provide any more details. Earlier, the Institute for the Study of War reported that the Russian troops could not oust the Ukrainian forces numbering up to 70 people from their fortified positions under the eastern span of the Antonivka Bridge in the occupied part of the region. We would really appreciate if you could share information about the podcast on social media. This way more people would learn about the highlights from Ukraine and truth about Russia's invasion. Ukrainian writer Victoria Amelina died in a hospital after being wounded in a Russian missile strike in Kramatorsk last week, reports Glavcom. The Pan-Ukraine informed that her heart stopped beating on July 1st in the Mechnikov hospital in Dnipro, central Ukraine. She became the 13th victim of the attack against a pizza restaurant. 37-year-old Amelina was an award-winning Ukrainian writer who started documenting war crimes after Russia's full-scale invasion last year. She also started working with children near the front line. After visiting Moscow, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, Pope's special representative, said that the Vatican had no peace plan for the war in Ukraine and that his mission was focused on humanitarian issues, reports Unian. Last week, Zuppi met in Moscow with Yuri Ushakov, one of President Vladimir Putin's advisors, Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, and Russian ombudsperson for children's rights, Maria Lvova Belova, who is wanted for deportation of Ukrainian children. Early in June, he also visited Kyiv for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to Zuppi, all the meetings were important, especially in humanitarian aspects. Zuppi has added that he will meet with Pope Francis in the coming days to discuss the results of the meetings. At the end of April, Pope Francis announced that the Vatican is participating in some kind of peace mission to end the war. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We are a commercial initiative of just 2 people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.